So once again, one of the biggest issues around gut health is the fact that as either poor circulation or the disruption of beneficial flora, as you create more circulating endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide has these systemic effects that it triggers inflammation basically in all tissues. So when you look at this particular study, 516 men and women between the ages of 50 to 79 over 5 years, and then they looked at people that had an LPS level greater than 50 picograms per milliliter, it tripled their risk for developing atherosclerosis over 5 years, tripled their risk. And then if they were smokers or even ex-smokers that had elevated LPS, it created a 13-fold risk in heart disease and stroke risk. I mean, I never like to say, hey, problems begin in the gut, but I remember uh, reading a Bernard Jensen uh, book, which was like one of the grandfathers of natural hygiene and, a real forerunner in the natural therapies arena. And, I remember his first line in his Chemistry of Man book was death begins in the colon. And I think that while we realize that we're a whole body and that there's a lot of complex interactions, and even when we talk about the triads, managing this gut immune piece, whether it's primary, meaning it was driven because maybe you took a bunch of antibiotics, or it's secondary because maybe you're under a lot of stress and that triggered your leaky gut. Regardless, you always have to have the management of this gut immune brain aspect of the triads in the front of your mind. Because for people today, between the pesticides that are on the food, the amount of medications that they're on, the amount of different medications that actually disrupt the microbiome, to the lifestyles that they live and the food quality that they eat, it's rare to find someone where we don't see some sort of significant interaction with the gut immune barrier and what's starting to drive lipopolysaccharide production. Now, this is really striking. This was in the journal Diabetes Care back in 2011. And I got to tell you, I don't see a bunch of information coming out about how to take care of your microbiome out of the diabetes journals, or dribbling down into the certified diabetic education coursework. 537 subjects, all with prevalent diabetes. The mean serum endotoxin levels were statistically higher. What was interesting in this is that the endotoxin score correlated with elevated CRP, elevated cholesterol, elevated triglycerides, and lowered HDL. Basically, the higher the circulating endotoxin, the bigger the diabetes risk. And then the next slide will show you the bigger the risk for metabolic syndrome. Now, there's some papers that just came out in 2018 that showed that microglial activation in the brain. So once again, we go up to the brain, we realize that, as the microglia get activated, it triggers a neuroinflammatory response, which causes destruction to the neurons, but more importantly, triggers a watershed event of systemic inflammation and immune dysregulation. They, and remember, and circulating lipopolysaccharide does get to the brain and is one of the main triggers for microglial activation. And now what they've done is they've directly connected microglial activation to the development of obesity in individuals. So, we're really starting to dig in and figure out these signaling compounds. This was that, I think, incredible study that, once again, this is the American Diabetes Association. I mean, it's the the lighthouse of information regarding diabetes in terms of clinical information. You look to the left, serum endotoxin activity, you look to the right, the parameters for metabolic syndrome. And what you quickly see is that the higher the circulating endotoxin, or in other words, the more the microbiome is in trouble, the more that blood flow is reduced to the intestine, the more that we're destroying beneficial flora, the more this directly correlates with parameters for metabolic syndrome. I think it's just striking. And I think, we're just at the tip of kind of looking at microbiome diversity, and we really don't know for sure what all that means yet. But I can tell you, after doing 35 years of clinical work, that correcting gut health has a tremendous impact on blood sugar, has a tremendous impact on lipids, and has a tremendous impact on areas like prediabetes and prehypertension. There's no doubt that we really need to pay attention to circulating endotoxin. And so when you think of gut immune brain, I really want you to think about families of products that help people manage their Triad 2 experience. So it's obvious when you go to the gut that probiotics are beneficial. And you know what? There's a lot of different strains of probiotics. I've always told people, look, find probiotics that are working for you. People get a clinical result from it. They're less gassy, less bloated. Their immune markers are down. Their skin rashes are going away. Their head's less foggy. Their tongue's not coated. There's a good probiotic, right? But the things we traditionally think of actually hold true to help most people get their gut under control. So they need probiotics, they need digestive enzymes. Many people, especially when they're beginning a program, they've worn down their digestive capacity. They can't eat raw food. They need to use digestive enzymes. Components like glutamine and zinc carnosine. I don't have it listed here though, but aloe, arabinogalactan is a form of resistant starch or prebiotic. These are compounds that prebiotics obviously help to feed the beneficial flora to keep them surviving. And then compounds like zinc carnosine and glutamine, and you could even throw DGL licorice in this, are really aimed at getting the mucosal barrier integrity improved so that you're rebuilding the mucosal barrier because the epithelial cells need a lot of glutamine to rebuild, right? It takes 2 glutamine amino acids for every time you're trying to build up that epithelial cell. So epithelial cells are conditionally deficient in glutamine. Obviously, zinc helps with tight junctions, and zinc carnosine's got a rich history with improving and epithelial repair. We've talked a little bit about arabinogalactan, just meaning that you need resistant starches and prebiotics because you got to feed that beneficial flora so they can make butyrate. When you make butyrate, you fatten up those mucosal cells. Much more effective, actually, to give prebiotics and resistant starch, actually, than it is even to give straight butyrate. Now, butyrate's interesting in that it may have some other properties, like helping to regulate macrophages. But there's a whole family of products that you can reach to that give benefit. Now, obviously, I listed a few things that are more on the kill the bad bug side. So cat's claw, grapefruit seed extract, berberine, awesome at helping to regulate zonulin and improve tight junction glycoprotein function. So these are compounds that you could kind of group. Anti-inflammatory compounds, things like cat's claw, curcumin, boswellia, things that kill bugs, things like grapefruit seed extract, berberine, olive leaf extract, podarco, right? And then there's the agents that help rebuild the gut lining. So zinc carnosine, DGL licorice, arabinogalactan, glutamine. And then there's the need for digestive support, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and that really creates your universe of what you're going to use. Uh, on the immune side, look, there's a lot of different immune compounds you can look to. If you're looking for helping with detoxification and kind of soaking up intoxicants and circulating endotoxin, chlorella and fulvic acid are fantastic. Curcumin, you can kind of put curcumin under the immune or the gut side. I chose to list it over with immune just because it has such a powerful anti-inflammatory effect, down regulating NF-kappa B, down regulating gene expression of chronic inflammatory pathways. And then there's the things that are, immune supportive. And so these immune supportive pieces are really important to things like beta-1,3-glucan, vitamin C, colostrum, all having some great value in trying to restore IgG, IgM, IgA competence, helping with improving macrophage activity, T killer cell activity, natural killer cell activity, and there's a wide variety of other things that we can list under here, guys. Mushrooms are incredibly important. Zinc is incredibly important. I just didn't want to make this list overwhelming. But what you can see is when you start to group these things, now you can start to make decisions on where is my patient at and where should I start with what I'm giving them. And I think that's really important. The third one, of course, the brain. And I think, choline derivatives are at the top of my list, phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylethanolamine, the choline alpha GPC. Choline derivatives are important because really as people's brains get disrupted, they lose vagal tone. And as they lose vagal tone, they lose cholinergic anti-inflammatory balance in the immune system. And so I think I really rely on choline derivatives a lot when I'm working with people's brains because most people's brains are in a neuroinflammatory defense and they're on fire. Other of the obvious agents, things like 5-HTP to build serotonin, dopamine support. So agents like mucuna, tyrosine, mucuna for example, which is a botanical that donates a lot of L-DOPA. You can work on your GABA, dopamine, serotonin pools, as well as norepinephrine and epinephrine pools. If people are tired and wired, you probably don't want to give them something for norepinephrine and epinephrine. If they're tired and flat, you probably do want to give them something for norepinephrine and epinephrine. SAMe being very good at building up norepinephrine and epinephrine. Phenylalanine, tyrosine. Other important things to generate energy in the brain. So, something like CoQ10 is important because it's intimately involved in mitochondrial firing to generate energy within the cell. Compounds like Relora, or which is used as an anti-anxiety, or theanine, really important for calming people down and allowing them to be focused. These are compounds that you think about in the family of brain health. And what you want to think about is, where is this person at? Are they anxious and nervous all day long? Well, you're going to have to start there. Are they having trouble getting to sleep, staying asleep? Well, you probably have to help that. Is their mood flat? Things like St. John's wort, SAMe can be important. Saffron can be important for more of that depressive side. If they're having trouble sleeping, maybe it's GABA that they need. So my point is that what you want to start to do is organize, where is the person presenting the majority of their symptoms in this relationship? Are they getting sinus infections? Do damp, moldy days bother them? Do they keep on colds and flus all the time? But yet they don't complain of being anxious or nervous or having trouble sleep. Well, even though this is a gut immune brain relationship, I'm probably going to start at the bottom of the triangle and work through gut and immune in that individual. Is it somebody coming to you that, they have an MTHFR gene SNP and they need some methylated folate? They're anxious, they're nervous, they have their borderline panic attack, they have obsessive food craving issues. Well, I'm probably going to start at the brain and maybe secondarily work their gut. So I think it's important that you realize you got to see where people are starting in these networks of the triads and you target that. So, once again, supplement support is improve GI function, digestion, and microflora balance, work on improving neurotransmitter synthesis and function, support dopamine reward cascades, which I think is, super common with, a lot of people having the reward gene or the alcoholic gene in the US. A lot of people succumb to craving patterns, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, food, gambling. Um, there's a lot of reward deficiency that takes place. It's important to support circadian sleep cycles, get the immune system to be in balance, and then support memory and cognition. If you begin to pull all these things together, it starts to make a lot of sense. So, when you think of this is what goes on. People get an irritable mood, their memory and focus gets off, they have psychosocial stress, they have, they may have some signs of inflammation, they could have signs of systemic inflammation, they may or may not have food allergies, they're starting to notice, constipation, bloating, diarrhea, digestive problems, cramping, reflux, any number of things can start to take place. But this is kind of where people start to see their shift, right? And what we really want you to do, think of people as if they're moving through time and these changes are occurring gradually. People don't wake up one day with colitis. They've had issues going on for several months where or years where they've built to their condition, just like diabetes takes a decade. So, what I want you to think about is that this relationship is dynamic and that it's changing as the inputs to the person's life are affecting them. Poor eating, more stress, more job stress, more family stress, more environmental exposure, less exercise, too much exercise, not enough sleep, put on drugs or medications based on maybe some lab values. All of these things are filtering in, creating the shift in the individual. And obviously, things start to kind of move sideways. So cortisol goes up, serotonin goes down. When serotonin goes down, I can't sleep because I don't have the starting material for melatonin. Begin to grow things like candida, maybe some other unfriendly flora start to shift my terrain in my gut. Maybe my differential, my white blood cell differential, like my monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils percent, although normal, could be starting to trend high, saying that there's a little bit of immune loading on the front end of the immune system and in the gut. And then we can see things like inflammatory cytokines like interleukin 6 and TNF alpha being upregulated. So, what I really want you to think about is it's a journey. This is a great example, and I'm going to finish with just a really quick example. Sarah Weinstein, 27-year-old law student, driven to succeed, under stress, follows the footsteps of her father. He's a well-known judge, was a competitive athlete in high school, used to winning no matter what. There's stress response. Has had recurrent ear infections as a child, but no other physical issues except that she has occasional sinus congestion. She notes growing stomach discomfort, needs to sit near the back of the class in case the urge strikes. So she's got IBS. Her mood swings. She feels growing loss of control, needs to make focus on a law review exam. She's anxious. Panic is on its way. She has to focus. She's beginning to see physiologic changes in her gut. And she has immune shift issues because she's beginning to get sinus infection. Remember, problems in the sinus, problems in the gut. So where she's at, depressed, sleep, stress. She's got diarrhea. She's bloating. May have some food intolerances. So as you can see, she starts to, as if Sarah would continue to live her life without any interaction, all of these things start to activate. Maybe she has some HLA gene SNPs. Maybe she's MTHFR positive. Maybe she continues to drive down the inflammatory pathway of her gut, making more histamine in her brain, making more glutamate in her brain, elevating her epinephrine, elevating her phenylethylamine, making her more panic driven, more anxious, less able to remain calm, which means less able to be focused. So it's just important to realize where she's at. She's a driven law student. She has IBS. She had a lot of antibiotics as a child. She has recurrent sinus congestion. She had a morning cortisol 25. She had positive for candida symptoms. Nothing had shown up in her immune system yet in her lab. So you're really catching her early on. So what's the strategy for a Sarah Weinstein? Open up her detox pathways, eliminate the yeast, restore normal flora and digestion, decrease suspected inflammation, so get rid of the foods, manage her mood and stress response, and ensure adequate sleep. There you go. Sarah's a pretty straightforward Triad 2 case. And, we're big on doing elimination diets. We love getting people off the big food lectins. So we do a modified low carb elimination diet to start on most people. If you want to go to the extent of a FODMAP diet, if you want to go to the extent of hey, I'm going to test for food allergens, that's fine. But usually we get a lot of success just starting people on elimination diet, unless they've got autoimmune thyroiditis, in which case we then do test for foods right away. So detoxification, why are we doing this? We want to download the histamine that's coming out of the liver. We want to open up the pathways for detoxification, so as we're killing off bad bugs, circulating endotoxin doesn't overwhelm us. We want to be able to use probiotics. 20 billion twice a day on her should be sufficient. Rotate probiotics as you see fit. You can use different types of agents. So whether it's cat's claw, berberine, caprylic acid, any of those things can take off. You can use different types of agents with glutamine in it. You can use digestive enzymes with hydrochloric acid, as long as they don't have, they're on a PPI. You don't want to give people hydrochloric acid then, because their doc's going to flip out. So what you're really doing with Sarah is really trying to regain control. If she's on PPIs, you want to try to wean her off. Some key tests you may want to use: zonulin, DAO, histamine, and lipopolysaccharide. All of those are key targets for gut permeability. I'm using zinc, carnosine, and glutamine. Sometimes you can find products that have both in it at the same time. And then obviously you want to follow up and find out where they're at, see if they need to do food allergy panels. And then mood, obviously GABA, magnolia, kava, theanine. Decide what's going to be appropriate. I mean, the big one, of course, you can start with all the time is magnesium. I mean, everybody with magnesium, they knocks down their nervous system response. However, sometimes if they've got GI cramping, they can't utilize it. So, once again, where does it end up? Start with probiotics. Use enzymes. If you want to write a script, you can pull out the script pad for nystatin. You can use cat's claw. You can use grapefruit seed extract. You can use olive leaf, glutamine and zinc carnosine. Get her on some 5-HTP, some GABA, some melatonin, and theanine, and off she goes. So I just wanted to give a quick rundown with a case as to what can you use. This makes it fairly simple. You put Sarah on a diet and you get her going on a program like this. She's feeling pretty good relatively quickly. And I think a lot of times we end up learning functional and regenerative medicine, and we make our scatter shot too wide. Always think about what triad is the most imbalanced. Where can I create a focused program that's going to give people results the first time they walk out my door? And that's how I'd like to conclude. So I really appreciate your time. I look forward to educating you in the future. And I hope that this talk brought you a lot of value as to the relationships in gut immune brain and how they influence in a systems biology network the impact of the health of your patients. This is Jim LaValle, clinical pharmacist, board certified clinical nutritionist. I hope you're having a great day.